Good day, class. I'm Mark. That's Gonzo over there. I can't really point to him per se. And then over to the other side, we've got with us How to D&D's Fred Wheeler. We're glad to have him with us today. Today we're talking about how to get miniatures on the cheap. All right, so Gonzo and Fred, basically what I know about miniatures and where to get them cheap is really a little bit. But I know that you can go to like thrift stores, and here in Florida, people love garage sales. And so sometimes if you're lucky, you can find some cheap miniatures there. So those are places that I know of pretty much to find miniatures. You also, there's places like Miniature Market online that you can get some things. And I know maybe Amazon, but after that, I'm kind of tapped out on where to get miniatures. I know, Gonzo, you've got an idea. I think that's a pretty solid idea of how to get miniatures.
Yeah, I have a great idea. And you guys are going to love this. But those of you that play in a gaming group, you generally have a few guys there. What you want to do is find the one that isn't married and has a lot of miniatures, because you need to match make that guy. And the chances are that when he does get married, he may be getting rid of a lot of his D&D stuff to make room and all of that. So you can get a lot of miniatures plus other stuff on the cheap. So that's the way I would go, because it's pretty tough to find these things cheaply.
That's a great idea. I think that would work. I think that would work.
Yeah, no, in all honesty, these things are great. They're a great addition to the game. We like using them personally. They add a three-dimensional feel to it. But we brought in the resident expert. Fred has several videos on how to find miniatures on the cheap, and we want to turn it over to you, Fred, because you can let us know, where can we go for this stuff?
Well, I would say the expert on cheap miniatures is actually the YouTube channel Blanco. But yes, I do have quite a few videos on where to get cheap Dungeons and Dragons miniatures, and the landscape keeps changing. 2020 is actually much more difficult than it was in the past, and which is weird because more miniatures are getting made and the demand has increased, and yet the cost of miniatures keeps going up. Like, what's going on? I would still say that the best option is always
board games.
Board games. Pre-painted miniatures usually the most expensive, and I would avoid them personally. You have to get really lucky to get pre-painted miniatures cheap. It doesn't really happen. It's not something you can duplicate. Unpainted miniatures in board games absolutely could be the best option. I do want to make it clear though that the best market for Dungeons and Dragons miniatures and miniatures full stop is North America, because if you're in the likes of South America, parts of Asia, parts of Europe, you can't buy nothing. You'd have to make it yourself. You can't even get it shipped to your country. So it really does depend on where you are in the world. So this isn't going to work for everybody. I'd say when it comes to looking at your options, go with the Dungeons and Dragons board games if you can. If you can't, then there are other options, not necessarily going to be the best solution for you, unfortunately. They are the right scale. That's the great thing about it. You still have to, even in this time, and even if you are in North America, you still want to be looking for a discount or a coupon code or a clearance. Clearances don't happen very often. Coupon codes happen occasionally. Discounts don't happen very often either. So it's very, very difficult.
And
I know
Fred,
a lot of people. Yep.
Well, I was going to say, what I also like about the D&D board games is not only do you have a lot of miniatures in each set, but there's also the landscape which interlocks that you can use for mapping or for your, tabletop landscape. So it's got a lot of uses that we can use right around our table.
Yeah, you're right, because those board games, those interlocking tiles really should have been how the tile sets should have been released.
Yeah, I agree.
Because everything moves around on the table and you can't hold it still. I know a lot of people talk about Reaper Bones and going for Kickstarters, because Reaper Bones keeps doing Kickstarters. problem with a Kickstarter is you wait at least a year for delivery. You're dealing with a large cash outlay to begin with. You can sort of tailor your order. If you are in the wrong country, you will find that the freight cost kills you, and then the exchange rate butchers you as well. So it's not necessarily a great option. I would say if you're in North America or possibly Canada, you're going to do pretty well. I think other parts of the world are going to struggle. eBay, a lot of people talk about eBay, and go and look for the lot, the Dungeons and Dragons lot. And really what's sitting on eBay depends on which country you are in. If you're in North America and Canada, not too bad. South America, New Zealand, like myself, and other parts of the world, not so great. There's a lot of scams. Blanco can point those out. His channel will point them out. There's a lot of knockoffs. You're going to find you'll have bidding wars with people, and you're not necessarily going to get what you saw in the picture. Sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't. You do have to be very careful. Miniature Market, I used to buy a lot of my stuff from Miniature Market. I'd pay 20, 50 cents from them. And then that's all very well, but that doesn't work now because nothing's that cheap. It's all a lot more expensive. So you're really just looking for, I would say, board games that have miniatures in them that are on discount through them, through the Miniature Market. The Book Depository, I used to use them because globally they freight everything for free. But the problem is all the board games are like so much more expensive than they used to be, and they're not doing discounts. Possibly a result of somebody doing far too many videos on cheap miniatures and where to get them. Possibly my fault.
Exactly.
You single-handedly made the market go up. Okay.
In the comments below, please let Fred know what you think about him raising the price of miniatures for all of us.
and thanks a lot. Yeah.
Amazon, I would say, is the best shot if you're in North America because you get free shipping for anything that's over $35. And there are some of the board games that are going to be reduced. I would say Castle Ravenloft is the best option, the one I put up in front of me. That's probably the best option. There are a couple of others, but you're still paying a lot more than you used to. Then there are other board games, but yet again, you got to look for those coupon codes and discounts. I'd go with looking at other options like 3D printing. 3D printing is really good because my understanding is in North America and possibly in parts of Canada, I don't know too much about the UK, but I do know that in your own country, you can go to a library and sometimes you can get things printed for free or very, very cheap. And so that can really reduce it. And you can get a lot of free plans for making these files that you can download for nothing to make these miniatures up, which is really good. The Dungeons and Dragons board games out there, there's a bunch of them. I would say at the top of my list would be Castle Ravenloft and the Wrath of Ashardalon. And then from there, they just get progressively more expensive until we finally get to something like Tomb of Annihilation, which is overpriced and usually out of stock. So there's a lot of different options with regard to other board games like Zombicide, Descent, Conan, Mass Darkness, Magic the Gathering. Not really an option for me because I couldn't get it shipped to my country, and then the exchange rate and shipping doesn't work. But North America could work out quite well, and some parts of Canada. Rune Wars, another board game that has a lot of miniatures in it, but you still have to look for the right price. If you're going for those options, you're not necessarily getting what you want, and you're not necessarily going to be able to get it in your country. You might find that they just don't stock it. Then there's another one which is really in the grey area, when you're really desperate, you don't know what to do, and you can go with the SCS Direct, and there's like 76 miniatures. I think there's a Fantasy Creatures one. They're probably not the right scale. They're probably not very good molds. They're probably pretty kind of cheap plastic, and
they'll all be giants, so there'll be like a giant dog and a giant rabbit.
Well, no, not quite like that. No, I think they're going to be a lot smaller than you might want. You might find them not a 28mm that you want things. And then if you want to go onto the dark side of things and you're really desperate, a lot of countries around the world can get access to what's called AliExpress. And AliExpress provides you with a whole bunch of knockoffs, which means you pay a lot less, but you do have to look. It's very hard to actually find what you're looking for on AliExpress. When you type in D&D miniatures, you'll get everything but that. So you have to look a long time, but that's quite cheap, and freight from them is not too bad as well. So that's a lot better for you if you are not in North America and you don't have the options that I've sort of suggested.
Well, all right. I told you he knew what he was talking about.
Yeah. So way more than we knew. Like I said, I didn't really know. All I know is that they're fun to paint, and that they do. You can get a wide range of prices. And I honestly, the idea of the board games is one that I think a lot of people overlook. And it's simple math. And you buy the board game for X amount of dollars. You divide by 40 some figures or more. And that's where you start to look at, is it more cost effective to do that or go and buy a miniature one at a time at Miniature Market or Amazon? And I think a lot of people don't think in those terms. Gonzo and I are big fans of painting the miniatures yourself. And I think Fred's idea of the unpainted being cheaper, I mean, they're cheaper anyway. There's just something about painting your own miniature, especially for your own character. It just kind of makes it yours. And honestly, it's kind of therapeutic, nice, relaxing. You know, you put on some music, start painting a little bit. You know, it's just a fun thing to do in between games. Yeah, look at that owl there, huh? Yeah, see, that's the kind of thing you just sit there and paint. And I think about, this is one of those things I think people can do well into their old age. You know, some old guys tie flies and stuff. I'm just saying that older people might enjoy this even more. But I know you got to have a magnifying glass of some kind to be able to see. Yeah. So us young folks, right. So I just think it's one of those things that if you've not painted miniatures, I think you need to get into and try it. It's a lot of fun. Another place you can go and get these is your local game store. There are going to be there may be a price difference there, and they may be a little more expensive, possibly.
Or they'll work with you. You know?
Or they'll work with you. Yeah. They have sales too.
Deals all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a good place, and sustain your local shop. We're really big on doing that. If you're not inclined and you're like, oh my gosh, I can never do that, they do have pre-painted ones. You're going to pay more, but you can buy them already painted. That is another option. But miniatures just really make the game really more exciting. We are visual typically, we humans, and it was just something about seeing the visual representation and kind of seeing where everything's at and laid out. And yeah, I mean, why wouldn't you want to have something like that? So thanks for joining us. This has been Dungeon Class. Thank you, Fred, again for joining us from How to D&D. Go check out his videos. We're going to have links down in the description on where he's got some videos on how to get where to get miniatures on the cheap. And also we'll have a link to Blanco. He's the resident expert. His whole channel is around miniatures in general. We'll have a link down in the description down there as well. But really, miniatures, if that's something that you're into and you want to know where to get them cheap, that we have some resources here for you. Go check out Fred's channel. The guy knows a little bit of everything, including where to find cheap miniatures, apparently. You know, he's an expert in everything. So anyway, thank you for coming around, and thank you guys. I think that's all we have time for today. And with that, class
dismissed.